The DNA study did not just overturn who died together at Pompeii, it revealed something darker. Genetic analysis placed most tested victims closer to ancient populations from the Levant, Greece, Oceania Greece, Egypt, and Anatolia than to native Italians. Strontium isotopes confirmed their families had lived in Italy for generations. They were not visitors, so if most victims were not Roman by origin, how did their families arrive? That answer begins in chains. Inside the bakery prison at Civita Juliana, the architecture itself tells a story of confinement. Narrow walls press close around a space just large enough for a few beds and a mill. Iron bars seal the windows, allowing only thin bands of daylight to cut through the gloom. The floor, hardened by years of trampling, preserves the looping tracks of donkeys forced to walk in endless circles. Their hooves, pressed deep into the mud, form a pattern of repetition and exhaustion. Alongside, the stone millstones shine with a glassy polish, evidence of relentless grinding, day and night, under a load too heavy for any single worker or animal to bear. In one corner, iron shackles are still embedded in the wall. These were not symbols of punishment, but tools of routine control. The grain grinding room and the dough chamber were linked by a single locked door. Here, enslaved bakers and animals lived and worked together, their labour fused into the city's daily bread. The air would have been thick with flour dust, and the sour scent of sweat, punctuated by the clatter of harness fittings and the steady creak of the treadmill. Objects abandoned in the rush of disaster, baskets of broad beans and fruit left uneaten, hint at a diet designed to keep bodies strong, not satisfied. Every detail, from the wear on the millstones to the compacted animal tracks, points to a system built on unending repetition. The beauty of Pompeii's public spaces was made possible by the hidden brutality of these rooms, where anonymity and exhaustion were the rule. The names of those who laboured here are lost, but the marks of their captivity remain, etched into stone and soil. Across Pompeii, the machinery of daily life relied on an immense, mostly invisible workforce. Archaeological surveys and demographic models converge on a stark figure. Between 30 and 40% of the city's population was enslaved. This proportion was not limited to a single villa or workshop. It permeated every sector. In bakeries, fulleries, tanneries, and garum factories, enslaved men, women, and children carried out the relentless work of grinding grain, dyeing cloth, tanning hides, and fermenting fish. The evidence is not just in the iron bars and shackles, but in the very remnants of meals and the wear on tools. Baskets of broad beans and fruit found abandoned in slave quarters point to a diet engineered for endurance, high in protein and calories, designed to keep bodies productive. Chemical traces on amphorae confirm that these foods were distributed systematically, a pragmatic investment in the city's human capital. Population estimates, drawn from household sizes and burial inscriptions, suggest that out of every 10 residents, 3 or 4 were enslaved. In a city of roughly 12,000, that means thousands lived and died in anonymity, their labour woven into the fabric of every public bath, market and private home. The glassy polish of millstones and the compacted animal tracks in bakery floors are not isolated curiosities, but the physical record of a system scaled to feed, clothe, and enrich the free population. Even the amphora stamps, bearing Greek and Syrian names, hint at the ethnic diversity and displacement that underpinned this economy. The city's beauty, so carefully preserved beneath volcanic ash, was built on exploitation measured not in isolated acts, but in a city-wide structure that demanded legal regulation and constant replenishment of its enslaved ranks. Freedom in Pompeii was not a simple prize, but a carefully engineered possibility. Roman law made room for release, but always on terms set by the masters. A slave could build up a peculium, a personal stash of coins, tips, or trade profits, sometimes hidden in clay jars or recorded on wax tablets. This savings fund offered a narrow route to purchase one's own freedom, but the process was never automatic. The master decided when and if the transaction would happen. Formal manumission took place in front of a magistrate, a ritualized act called manumissio vindicta. The slave knelt, a rod was touched to the shoulder, and a declaration of freedom was made. Census manumission, by contrast, was a bureaucratic act, registration on the official rolls, often at the time of a new census. Both routes granted Roman citizenship, but with limitations. Freedmen could not hold high office or serve in the legions. Their status was always marked by the shadow of their former bondage. The Lex Alia Sentia, passed in 4 CE, set strict boundaries. No slave under 30 could be freed formally unless under special conditions. Masters had to show cause, and the state could intervene to block releases deemed improper. Even after manumission, the freed person owed lifelong services, opera to their former master, now their patron. This bond was legal, economic and social, ensuring that the freedman's new freedom reinforced, rather than threatened, the existing order. The system was flexible by design. It offered hope and incentive, but on terms that kept the labor force stable and the hierarchy intact. The path from slave to freedman ran through savings, legal ceremony, and enduring obligation. A calculated mechanism that allowed the city to replenish its ranks and maintain control, even as some crossed the boundary from property to person. In the aftermath of Pompeii's earthquake in 62 CE, the city's social hierarchy began to shift in ways that left a permanent mark on its streets and monuments. Freedmen, once enslaved and now legally liberated but still tied by patronal obligations, stepped into the gaps left by fleeing elites. The House of the Vetii stands as a testament to this phenomenon. Its owners, Aulus Vettius Conviva and Aulus Vettius Restitutus, had both gained their freedom and amassed fortunes not through inheritance but through commerce and calculated reinvestment. Their home, one of the most extravagant in the city, boasts a fresco program that covers nearly every wall. Scenes of myth and luxury crowd the rooms, from the famous Punishment of Ixion to Cupids at play in workshops, signaling not just wealth but a deliberate rewriting of social identity. Absent are the ancestral portrait busts that lined the halls of old patrician families. Instead, the Vetii filled their atrium with displays of abundance and taste, a visual claim to status in a world that measured lineage in marble and pigment. Elsewhere, the name Numerius Papidius Ampliatus appears on a marble inscription at the Temple of Isis. Once enslaved, Ampliatus not only purchased his freedom, but funded the reconstruction of this Egyptian cult sanctuary after the earthquake. His generosity earned his young son, Numerius Papidius Celsinus, a seat on the city council at just 6 years old, a rare privilege for the child of a freedman. The inscription, still legible on the temple's pranaios, records this act of public benefaction and the family's ascent from servitude to civic prominence. These stories are not isolated. The earthquake created a rare opening. Damaged properties changed hands, and freedmen with savings peculium seized the chance to buy, build and sponsor. Their houses, shops and dedications reshaped the city's landscape. The evidence of their rise is embedded in stone, pigment and the very street plan of Pompeii. Far from being a city of static Roman bloodlines, Pompeii was a mosaic of ambition, migration, and self-invention. Its plaster casts, in the end, are portraits of the displaced and the determined, as much as of the doomed. Pompeii's streets carried the marks of a city where languages collided and identities overlapped. On the steps of the Temple of Isis, a dedication stone preserves the name of Numerius Papidius Ampliatus. He was a freedman who rebuilt this Egyptian sanctuary after the earthquake. His act was inscribed in Latin, but the cult's prayers echoed in Greek. Nearby, graffiti catalogues reveal a city scribbled with trilingual messages, Latin boasts, Greek shop signs, Oscan curses, and even stray Phoenician letters. The walls of taverns and workshops are dense with names like Mithridates, Aurelia, and Moses, each hinting at origins far beyond Campania. Amphorae stacked in market stalls bear merchant stamps in Greek and Syrian scripts, tracing the flow of goods and people from the eastern Mediterranean. In the arena, gladiator graffiti switches between Latin and Greek, while in the back rooms of a bakery, a scratched blessing to Athena sits beside a plea for liberty. Even the city's official inscriptions, catalogued by modern scholars, show a pattern. At least 1/3 are written in Greek or Oscan, evidence of a daily life shaped by migration and exchange. These material traces, temple dedications, amphora labels, and graffiti are not just relics of commerce or piety. They are the fingerprints of a cosmopolitan population, lived out in the open, long before science would confirm what the stones already whispered. Geneticists working with the plaster cast remains have now delivered the final confirmation. The 2024 Current Biology study extracted genome-wide DNA from 8 individuals and measured strontium isotopes in 9. The results are unambiguous. About 70% of each person's ancestry traces back to the eastern Mediterranean, Anatolia, the Levant, and Egypt. Only 1/5 of their genetic profile matches the local Italian baseline, with the rest showing minor North African or Mediterranean inputs. Principal component analysis places these individuals far from the cluster of Iron Age Italians, aligning them with populations from Greece and Western Asia. Strontium from tooth enamel reveals that 7 of 9 grew up on Campanian soil, but 2 carry isotope signatures from distant eastern landscapes. The people preserved in ash were not simply Romans. They were migrants, children of displacement, their lives and deaths shaped by the machinery of empire. Today, Pompeii's ruins still draw crowds seeking echoes of lost grandeur. But DNA, like the city's own graffiti, exposes the empire's hidden machinery, including migration, bondage, and the erasure of origins. These plaster casts are not Roman icons. They are the faces of the empire's displaced and forgotten. Their silence endures.